This is the Journey Podcast. We highlight the journeys of our guests, where they've been, where they are now, and where they are going. Let's join them on their journey. This is on Journey Podcast. Today we're joined by Alvin Narsey. Alvin is a business a coach of a type, but he really focuses on cash flow audits and helping businesses really maximize their cash flow and use that using some popular methods out there, but some of his own unique methods as well. And these are methods that I use in my own business and I'm very passionate about. And I really think it's the way to run a business is these types of methods. So I'm really glad to have Alvin here today to just explain that. Alvin specializes, I think, in probably one of the most complicated businesses, maybe for me, hopefully not for him, and that's retail. And it's complicated because retail, who knows what's going on sometimes. And so Alvin has bought and sold several retail businesses. He's consulting in that space right now to help retail businesses maximize profits. And he takes his experiences from these just work in other retail businesses all over the world now. Originally from Australia, and now he's living in Germany. So welcome, Alvin. I'm really excited to just take some time and chat about what you do and your journey to here. So how are you doing today?
I'm going great, Nate. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I'm excited to be hanging out with you today.
Yeah, this is great. So tell us about your business and how did you get into it? What's the name of your business right now?
Yeah, I've just called it. It's a really fancy name. It's called Alvin Narsey Coaching.
Awesome. Keep it simple, right?
That's right. So like you mentioned, I am a business coach and I work mainly with retailers because I was in the retail business, as you mentioned before, and I'm sure we'll go into that. And so I help retail businesses improve their cash flow and profitability. So that's mainly my jam. And, and that's when usually retail businesses come to me, is when they're in a little bit of a situation where they're trying to figure out where all the money is going in their business, and also at the point where they're trying to figure out how they can generate more profits in their business. And that's usually when they come and source me out.
So you came from the retail pharmacy business.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure what the differences are. I'm sure there's some differences between the American retail pharmacy business and maybe the Australian and European. So tell our audience kind of what that means to be a retail pharmacy business in your experience, and if you're able, compare it to the American culture. I'm sure you have an understanding of that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're right. I bought and sold and grew retail pharmacy businesses in Melbourne, Australia. So the main difference I see between the US and Australia is that in Australia, all pharmacies have to be owned by a pharmacist. And I think that's slightly different in the US.
Big corporations own them here.
Absolutely. You've got, I think it's Walgreens.
Walgreens is one of the major players here.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the major difference. And in fact, the pharmacies in Australia have been moving towards the US type of model of retailing. And that's involving having a dispensary for your traditional medicines and also having some sort of front of shop offer, like cosmetics, hair supply, hair products, etc., to sort of help, obviously help bring in clients into the pharmacy and help compensate some of the margins that you're typically getting from selling prescription medications.
Okay. So primarily the businesses that you have helped, were they selling to corporate or are they selling to other small business owners?
So the people I help at the moment?
Yeah.
So the people I help at the moment are actually small business owners.
Okay. And you're selling them, have you helped them sell to corporate, or are they selling to other small business owners as they like?
No, they're actually selling retail. So they're selling to you, the consumer.
Okay. You're not helping them sell their business. You're just helping them maximize their profit in the current business they're in.
Yes,
okay.
I help them maximize their cash flow and profit. However, and we could probably talk about this later on, when I work with a client, we always work at optimizing our business for sale. So because, when we start to work on our business and optimize our business for sale, typically what we're trying to do to get a maximum sale price, we want to have maximum profitability. And the flow on effect of that is if we start working on our profitability, we end up designing, creating, and systemizing a much better business. So, that's kind of like a flow on effect.
So not necessarily to sell the business, but if a business is going to buy it, it wants to be one that's maximized profit anyway. So they kind of go hand in hand. You're prepared for that if you wanted to sell the business.
Absolutely. And you're prepared at any time, 100%. And so when you sell, you obviously want to maximize the price that you get. And like I mentioned, the price is a function of your net profit, the amount of profit that you're making. It's usually a multiple of that all around the world. It just depends on the industry you're in and the multiples in your country. So yeah, so it's a really good way to think forward, even though a lot of business owners I work with don't want to sell. That's one of the challenges I have, is trying to get them to think about, we really need to think about it this way for us to, continue to move forward in your business.
So tell us a little bit about owning a retail pharmacy business. Let's go back in time a little bit when you were running that. Was that challenging? Was that an easy business to be in? How did that go?
Yeah, it was really challenging all the way through. One of the main challenges that we had in pharmacy, anyway, in Australia at that time, there's the rise of the discount pharmacy. And so, we're getting a lot of new entrants coming into the market based off the US model. And we're also getting, because in Australia, much of the medicines are subsidized by the government. The government was slowly realizing, like, we can't continue to subsidize these medications. So they were continually dropping the margins that they would end up paying us. So it was a real challenge all the way through. But, within those challenges, there are many, many opportunities. And we were able to find those opportunities and use them to grow our business.
That's interesting. So how did you get into the pharmacy business? Was this what you wanted to do when you grew up?
No way. I I did high school, and in my final year of high school, I just happened to get really good grades. And so when I got the good grades, I put all sorts of fun things on there. I thought, like, to become a dentist, a lawyer, a few other things, and I never got into them. But on we could have 6 choices, and on my 6th choice, I put pharmacy because my aunt was a pharmacist. So I thought, what the heck? So I put that down, and little did I know, I didn't get into all the other things, but I got into pharmacy.
You made your aunt proud.
Yeah, I tried to make my aunt proud. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when I got into pharmacy, it was totally not what I expected. It was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of hours trying to remember stuff. And I really didn't enjoy it. I was really much more interested in, I was DJing at the time. I was partying, I was going to clubs, etc. I was more interested in that. So I just kind of, it was a 5-year course, kind of scraped through, but it really didn't all click together until we do our final year where you do an intern year. And you're in the real world. You're talking to patients. You're actually in a pharmacy. Doing real life things rather than theoretical things, reading a textbook. And that's when I fell in love with the profession, because it was like totally different to what I was doing at school, at university.
So you lived and you owned a business in Australia. You live in Europe now, in Germany. And, us Americans, we kind of slap these big things on stuff. But for those who don't know, Europe is a collection of multiple countries with multiple cultures and personalities and governments, and they can do their own things independently. So you've consulted with these businesses all over the world. How do you overcome the unique differences between regulations and cultural and mindset? How do you overcome those challenges when you consult?
Absolutely. So yeah, you're right. I coach business owners all over the world. And because of what you've mentioned, I have obviously niched down into my retail niche. Also, I mainly market to consult with retail businesses in English-speaking countries. So that's, USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. So within that, you're right. There are all these little different bits of legislation and the way you go about doing business. However, the stuff that I work with my clients in doing is sort of fundamental business practices. And you mentioned you use it in your business. These are the basics which I'm working through with my clients in. So the basics are essentially the same wherever you go around the world. And it's just making sure that we're doing it correctly and, paying a little bit of attention to whatever regulation there is and just working within those. But essentially, it's really not much of an issue. It's the same thing wherever we go.
That's neat.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the most common issue you see businesses, no matter where you go in the world?
Okay. Yeah. So no matter where I go, the most common issue I see with businesses is that they're, running out of cash or they're cash flow constricted.
Mm.
And the second most common thing I see is a lot of businesses focus on revenue rather than profitability.
Hmm.
And I think that's a function of the startup culture that we are in at the moment. Because, when you're starting up a business, and especially if you're doing software and that kind of thing, there is a real focus on hitting high revenue goals without respect to actually making money. And that's a little bit of a difference that small to medium business owners, especially in my space, kind of overlook.
Yeah, even in the retail space, that seems kind of strange because you have to carry so much inventory, which is one of the things I don't like about retail. Is all the inventory cost you
Yeah.
have to carry, and you would think you would need to be more focused on that than just the revenue.
You would think that, and I would agree with you. However, in the retail game, there is this thing, the emergence, as I mentioned earlier, of the discount player. So that means in almost every market, every retail market, there is always some big conglomerate that's got a discount option who are selling on the high street as well. And if you're a small to medium business owner, and if you get caught up in that discounting cycle, all you're trying to do is basically trying to keep up with that big store without realizing that you're eroding your margins because you're trying to compete on price only. And you're kind of forgetting that those bigger players, they've got deals with suppliers. So it doesn't matter if most of them, if they sell at a really thin margin, they're more than likely getting a kickback from the supplier for really pushing their product and getting it into the marketplace. And also, a lot of the big companies are using these as what we call in our industry a loss leader. So they're using it as a function of their marketing costs. So instead of spending, say, $10 on doing a flyer or a Facebook ad, they would push that product and lose $10 and effectively use that as a marketing cost.
Yeah, that's been very common with the online retailers, actually, especially in the US.
Yes.
So through your business journey, what's one thing that you didn't expect to happen? Tell us about that. Yeah,
in
just
my own business?
from owning retail to consulting, what's the biggest thing you didn't expect to happen so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't expect to actually become a business coach. This was the biggest surprise for me. What happened was during the pandemic in Australia, when I sold my business last year, I had no idea what I was going to do when I was going to move to Germany. And I was working with a business coach at the time, Glenn. And Glenn asked me, what are you going to do? And I was like, I have no idea. I haven't worked it out yet. I'll probably buy another business when I get to Germany. Anyway, we had dinner on the last night and one night before I left. And, he really made an impression on me. So I really looked into it because, he thought I was a really good implementer. And, I took on everything that he said and really implemented it. So, it made sense to me that I could then help other retail businesses do the same, because one of my biggest values is service. I love to help people, obviously being a pharmacist as well. And so this is another way that I get to fulfill that need in working with clients. So that was so unexpected because I didn't plan for this. It just kind of happened.
Wasn't the life goal there for you?
No, it wasn't the life goal.
So what's your biggest challenge in getting the coaching business off the ground right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So my biggest challenge is at the moment, I've got all these amazing ideas and I am essentially lazy. I'm lazy because I've got so many other interests that I want to pursue outside of building businesses. I love to read, I love to meditate, I love to go traveling and exploring. So my biggest challenge at the moment is onboarding a team to help me with all the things that need to be done to really spread the word out there about the work that I'm doing. And so the challenge involves really understanding what needs to be done, creating systems and procedures, and then going out to the marketplace. And mainly in my space at the moment is finding virtual assistants to help me do all the work, which so far has been relatively good because I've been using virtual assistants for a while and I'm experienced with using them. But it's a process. You got to find the right person. It's difficult because they're not in the same room as you, and multiple conversations, interviews, etc.
Yeah, it takes a long time to do that. And then you have the person, and you have to well, I need you to do this, but you have to you haven't created that. So that's the challenge of being a business owner. Is you have to create all of the systems. Nobody's going to give it to you. Nobody's going to make it for you.
Exactly. Because at the end of the day, you're expecting someone to do what you want them to do. And unless you're very clear on the outcome and what needs to happen, the other person, especially many of our virtual assistants around the world today are in non-English speaking countries. Everything gets lost in translation and you end up getting frustrated, but really you can't get frustrated at them. You got to get, it's your own doing because you haven't laid out the steps properly.
So what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned over your career?
Yeah, the most important lesson, which is going to be a little bit woo-woo, I'll preface it with that. But I think the most important lesson I've learned in my businesses and in life really is to ensure that I have a sufficient enough vision for myself. So when I say vision, I'm just like, what do I want my life to be? How do I want to live? What does happiness look like to me? And what do I want to experience? What are my values? So basically what's really important for me, and then working backwards to making sure that all of those things are fulfilled.
So if somebody was starting out in business, what would be the piece of advice you would give them?
Yeah, I would say that first step, and this is the first thing that I do with my clients as well, is let's take a step back and understand what you want out of life, what's really important to you, what are your values, etc. And then let's go and look at how we can use this business to provide all of that for you. So I think that's a big missing piece. I think a lot of people get into business, and Michael Gerber says this very well in the E-Myth, because we're technicians, we're really good at what we do, building widgets or repairing things, etc. And we fall into the business thinking that to make a lot of money, which is great. But I think we all need to take a step back, because this business of ours can provide something so much more than what we thought it could. And that's the first piece I always work with my clients. And in fact, that was one of the first pieces my first business coach worked with me as well.
So let's dive a little bit into what you do without making this a full-blown session today, which we're going to talk about it at the very end here. You've got an offer for those who, so I think that's really cool. So cash flow for most businesses is broken, in my opinion. So where does somebody start with that? Where do they start with you to make that work, especially in retail? Because I think you've got this high cost of product sitting on the shelf, and if you can't sell it, you can't get rid of it. You're stuck with it. So
and it's capital that's sitting on your shelf that should be in your bank account. You're right. That's one of the fun things about retail. But let's take a step back. So cash flow, I think one of the first things that we need to do as a business owner, and this is applicable to all businesses really, is to get an understanding of the flow of cash through your business. And the easiest way to do that is to track it or record it. I think most business owners, we forget about this piece because one, we assume it's really hard. And I think we tend to overcomplicate it. But when I work with my clients, we just have a very, very simple system. We use a very simple Excel sheet or a Google sheet. And all we're doing is tracking for the previous week, and I recommend we do it weekly, is the amount of money that went into our business, as in income that came in, the amount of money that went out, as in what we paid out of the business in terms of expenses and wages and labor costs, etc. And then making sure whatever is left over, that figure marries up with our bank account. So we know we've done it correctly. And just by doing that really simple exercise, just taking the time to do that, you can start to see, oh, last week I paid, for instance, $100 to this supplier, $200 for the electricity. And then once you start doing that over time on a weekly basis, it's like you end up wearing X-ray goggles. Like you can start to see things and you can start to understand what's affecting your business. And it makes it really, really powerful. So it's a first simple step.
Yeah, just actually understand where it's going and what you're doing with it.
Yes.
That's great. And I think just having that voice of reason talking to you to say, hey, did you think about this? Did you do this? And then an accountability piece too, because
Absolutely.
we have to have somebody to push us a little bit further along. And that's the advantage to coaching, is to keep
Yeah.
us, these are great, smart, intelligent people. But the greatest athletes need a coach to push them along. And I think that's a big win.
Absolutely. Yeah. You either need a coach or a mentor or someone as part of your mastermind group. But you're right. Having someone that you can bounce ideas off and to make you accountable really helps you immensely.
So you already mentioned your coach a little bit. Can you talk about them? Would you
Yeah.
consider them probably the most important piece to your career at this point as far as a mentor?
Absolutely. I've had many coaches and mentors. My first business coach, Casey, was amazing, still is amazing. And he taught me a lot of the things that I've learned today and implemented in my business. I've also had personal coaches, mindset coaches, fitness coaches. So I'm really big. I'm impatient. So I'm really big on hacking the curve and really jumping ahead and trying to get all the results pretty quickly. So I am very fortunate in that I don't mind asking for help. I'm very happy to ask for help and get results. I've had mentors who have been really, really wise and helped me along the way. And the other thing that I found that was really important was to have some sort of a mastermind group or a team or some friends who are also business owners going through the same thing as you are. I think I've found that to be super invaluable. Super valuable, I beg your pardon. And, so I still have my mastermind group today there's 5 of us, 5 guys, we've got different businesses and we hang out regularly and discuss what's happening in our business. And that is just so powerful.
Yeah, that's huge. Having those mastermind groups, those mentors, those peer mentors has made a big impact on a lot of business owners that we've talked to here on the journey. So tell me, what's a lesson you've learned in your career that you think everybody should learn at some point?
Yeah, absolutely. I really want to harp on understanding your own journey and no pun intended, but really understanding what you want out of life and your vision for your life, even if it's only like 2 or 3 years down the future. Because from having a clear vision of what you want to achieve, only then you can really work backwards and start to create all the steps to get you there and then decide what's going to get you there. So I think that's the number one piece, very often overlooked. I think because of the woo-woo nature of it and people don't like, it kind of falls into the personal development space a little bit. And some people are a little bit funny about that. But really, it's no more than just, working with somebody makes it a lot easier to take a step back, find out what's important to you, what do you want to achieve, and so on, what makes you happy. We don't take the time to think about that enough.
So you've mentioned this a couple of times. Can you define for us the woo-woo nature before we go any further?
Yeah, absolutely. So this woo-woo nature is one of the first things that my clients bring to me when I try and walk them through this process. I think it's because of the self-help industry. This is just my interpretation, that people think that it's just really a waste of time, that we're manifesting and we're putting out to the universe and all that kind of thing, which I guess to a certain extent we are doing. But what we're actually doing is actually looking inwards. And I think that looking inwards part, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable because we haven't really taken the time to understand what we want. And so, that kind of falls into that space a little bit and makes people a little bit uncomfortable.
I like that. Just got to get uncomfortable to figure out
Totally.
where it works. So,
yeah.
So what's the one thing about your job as a business consultant that almost no one else agrees with you about? Like if we had 50 business consultants in the room, this is the one thing that you would stand up and say, no, this is what I do. And everybody says you're crazy.
Oh, wow. That's a really great question. I think one of the main things that, if we're in a room with a few other people, I think my focus on cash flow and profit is something that, I get into heated debates with. If I'm sitting with another business owner, or perhaps a marketer will say marketing is really important, or another business might say something else is really important. I guess we all have our biases, but this is something that I often have to contend with when I'm in a room with some other businesses.
That's great. Yeah, profit is 100% the only way that a business is going to continue to grow. So eventually, you have to have profit. All businesses get to that point.
Absolutely.
So what is the most underrated tool that you couldn't do your job without? Tell us a little bit about some of those tools.
Absolutely. So one of the most important tools for me is my scheduling software. So I use Calendly, which is really, really, really cool. And it's really cool because it syncs to my calendar. If your listeners aren't familiar with Calendly, so I use my calendar for everything. I've got everything blocked out in there. And so it syncs perfectly and it books everything beautifully. So that's really, really good. The latest tool I have been using, because I do a lot of workshops and webinars, I use this software called StreamYard, which I'm finding to be super, super useful. So StreamYard is a software platform that allows me to stream my presentations or workshops to multiple areas at one time. So I can stream on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube at the same time. So I can sort of widen my reach without my VAs having to go back in and upload it to a different platform. So I'm finding those two tools really useful. Also, I've got to give props to this microphone, which I've been using for podcasts. It's been fantastic. This is my Yeti X.
Yeti X. Good, good microphones and good sound equipment is really important for this. I've learned a lot in my podcasting journey.
I bet.
Yes. Okay. So what other occupation besides what you're doing right now or what you've done in the past would you like to try?
Absolutely. I've always flirted with becoming an architect. I love design. My uncle's an architect, and I love the way he designs houses and stuff. So that's always been on the back of my mind. And I did say when I turned 50, I was going to go back to architecture school. But back then I didn't know I was going to be living in Europe. So who knows? But architecture would be up there.
Okay. Well, I can't wait to see. Maybe you'll design a pharmacy. Maybe that's boring. The square box, you put stuff in it.
Right. So I'll come and design your house on the hill.
I love it. Yeah. Well, I'm hoping to do that one of these days when the building prices come down here.
Yeah, when they come down.
Right. Well, Alvin, I really appreciate you being on the Journey podcast today. I got a couple of rapid fire questions here for you. What are 3 books you would recommend to the audience?
Absolutely. So the first one, and I just read this the other week, was Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. Really, really important book. The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. And the other book, which is not often on the radar, it's this book called 4 C's by Dan Sullivan. Dan Sullivan, to me, is one of the #1 business coaches in the world. And it's funny, his business coaching focuses more on mindset. And I think that's a really underrated book, the 4 C's.
Good recommendations. Okay. If I was starting a business today, what's one word of wisdom you would give me?
Focus on your cash flow.
Of course, stay on brand too, but that's so important. That's why you do what you do.
It's fundamental.
Yeah. I've asked you a lot of questions. Is there one question you wish I would have asked you?
Wow, that's a really good question. Nothing immediately comes to mind. Maybe you could ask me what my morning routine looks like.
Yeah, what is your morning routine?
Yeah. Okay. I'm really big on routines. I work really well with that. It just helps my scattered mind. But my morning routine, Monday to Friday, is I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I meditate for an hour. I practice a particular type of meditation, which has been really useful and important for me. After I meditate, I usually alternate with going to the gym or going to the sauna. And then I come home and then I make a Turkish coffee, which has been one of my passions. It's an old school method of brewing coffee. And I absolutely love that process every morning of grinding the beans and then making the coffee. But that's my morning, and that's my morning routine usually.
Yeah, always good to have those routines that keep you structured to get through the day. I younger in my years of was just like kind of threw everything together and overslept because I was the business owner, And now that routine means so much to me because I'm way
Yes.
more productive if I get that done. So,
Absolutely.
Alvin, you have a special offer here for people who have listened to the Journey podcast, interested in a way to engage with you. So tell them how they can engage with you and how you can help our listeners here on the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm doing is for listeners of the Journey podcast, the first 3 listeners that send me a message on Facebook or LinkedIn and say that you heard me on here on Nate's show, I will do a 15-minute cash flow and profit audit / strategy session with you. We'll get on the phone, we'll do a Zoom call, and we'll just try and work through some of the issues that you're having with your cash flow and profitability. And my aim in that 15 minutes is for you to at least we're going to come up with a couple of solutions that you can take and implement yourself.
So tell our listeners where they can find you online, what's your website, LinkedIn, how we can find you.
Yeah, so everything's under my name, Alvin Narsey, Narsey. Hit me up on all the socials. Really easy.
Real easy to find it. We of course link all of our guests with the Journey podcast. So click on the link at the bottom of this video or episode that you're listening to here today. Alvin, I really appreciate you being here today. This was a pleasure to talk with you. Lots that we can learn about making our businesses more profitable and maybe lowering that stress. We just have a better quality of life in general, because things that we lose sleep over is generally money and those types of things. So it's a great place for somebody to start.
Absolutely, 100%. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Nate. This is awesome. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, great. You have a good day there. Thank you.